Solitaire is not a game that makes you think much about the other people in the room. But open Solitaire Cash, enter a tournament, and the screen fills with usernames, profiles, and scores. You assume everybody paid the same fee and played the same game. In one example described in court, the tournament contained a single human player. Papaya Gaming supplied the other 19. Those entries looked like players, but each one was a score selected by Papaya's algorithms and attached to a name and a profile. No bot ever played a hand of solitaire. Papaya also ran what it called tailored sessions. There, it arranged the scores around a real player to give that person a win, a loss, or a particular finishing position. A federal judge has now ordered the Israeli mobile game company to surrender $719 million in profits attributed to its false advertising. Papaya makes Bingo Cash, Bubble Cash, and Solitaire Cash. The last of those is its flagship game. The pitch works because everybody understands solitaire. Pay an entry fee, play a short game, and compare your score with other players. Finish high enough, and you win cash. The matches do not have to happen live, but every leaderboard still needs players. You wait a few hours for a result, and the app feels empty. Get one quickly, and you can collect a win, absorb a loss, and enter again. The industry calls this player liquidity. Enough suitable players entering the right tournaments at roughly the right time. Papaya needed those seats filled quickly. Leave somebody staring at an unfinished leaderboard for too long, and there is a decent chance they close the app before paying for another tournament. Papaya entered a market that Skillz had spent years building. Skillz had invested more than $1 billion in the business. Much of the work was the slow, expensive job of attracting enough customers to make quick matchmaking possible. By the time of the trial, Skillz still had not turned a profit. Papaya arrived later and faced the same problem. Its players were spread across different games, entry fees, and tournament types. But every version needed enough people available whenever a customer opened the app. Skillz had paid to build that crowd. Papaya filled the gaps with bots. Papaya used liquidity bots to complete tournaments quickly. Tailored bots did something more deliberate. They created a particular result for one human. Everybody else on that leaderboard could be artificial. A player on a losing streak could be given a win. Another could enter a session built to make them lose. It was the human that still produced a real score. But Papaya chose the room it entered and supplied everybody else. Papaya's own game data showed how routine this had become. The records examined by the court covered roughly 2.6 billion tournaments. Tailored bots appeared in more than 630 million of them. That's close to 1 in every 4 tournaments. Now, even that ratio hides the scale of the artificial crowd. The court counted more than 13 million bot participants, compared to about 11 million human participants. More fake players appeared in Papaya's records than real ones. These sessions were built around a real player to produce a chosen result. They were spread out across Papaya's games and remained in use for years. A tournament could end up looking busy, finish quickly, and send the customer straight into the next one, regardless of how many actual people were available. The artificial population also appeared in Papaya's prize totals. Papaya advertised that its games had awarded $6.7 billion in prizes. According to the court, human customers received roughly $2 billion. The gap was $4.7 billion. Papaya's total included prizes credited to bots. When one of them finished at the top of a leaderboard, there was no customer waiting to withdraw the balance. The entry fees stayed with Papaya, while the bot's supposed winnings still helped make the advertised prize pool look enormous. Now, the gap really shouldn't be read as money stolen from players who had already won it. It's the difference between the prize figure Papaya presented to the public and the amount that actually reached human customers. Someone seeing a prize figure that large would picture a huge competitive community with billions flowing to real winners. But most of the advertised prize money never reached an actual person. But players noticed. They saw strange names, strange scores, and suspiciously convenient results. Then they wrote to Papaya to ask whether they were competing against bots. The company assured customers hundreds of times that its games did not use bots or computer players. One person asked the question as directly as possible: was every opponent real, or were computers sometimes playing? Papaya told them again that there were no bots. The same question appeared in Papaya's Facebook group. Internet emails show that posts mentioning bots were removed. One customer kept pressing. Papaya co-founder and chief technology officer Andre Bierman told the support team to send a carefully worded reply and close the account. The user, he wrote, smells like trouble. Inside the company, employees were also discussing how to make the bots harder to spot. Papaya modified the way they performed so their profiles would look more human. One employee suggested that the margin of their winnings should be smaller and less obvious to players. The questions were accurate, but Papaya treated the people asking them as the problem. This became more consequential when Papaya had to describe its business to the companies that allowed it to operate. Real money mobile games sit on a sensitive legal line in the United States. When people pay to compete against one another and skill decides who wins, the platform can present itself as the organizer of a contest. Papaya said that was exactly what it was doing. The company obtained a detailed legal opinion for payment processors. It described players receiving the same hand, competing head-to-head, and never playing against Papaya. The bots appeared nowhere in that opinion. Papaya gave similar accounts to app stores, payment processors, and advertising channels. These companies decide whether an app can be distributed, promoted, and trusted to handle payments. A truthful description of the tailored sessions would have told them that Papaya selected automated scores around individual customers and could arrange the result those customers received. The court concluded that disclosure would have kept Papaya out of this market. Inside the games, the automated scores solved Papaya's empty lobby problem. In the paperwork, Papaya described a clean contest between human players. That description kept the apps available and the payments moving. And the business grew quickly. Papaya's revenue surged, while Skillz, the rival it had entered the market behind, went sharply in the other direction. Papaya argued that it grew through better games, marketing, and user experience. Its experts said that bots reduced waiting times, and that humans collectively received slightly better returns in tournaments containing them. An instant tournament is clearly preferable to an empty lobby. But Papaya made that trade for its customers without telling them. It advertised human competition, then denied the automated opponents when players noticed them. During the trial, Papaya's lawyer acknowledged that the customer support denials were wrong. Papaya says that it eventually stopped using bots. By then, its games had attracted enough real customers to fill the seats. The crowd Papaya had once imitated had finally arrived. Skillz took Papaya to court after watching its own revenue collapse while Papaya's grew. It sued under federal false advertising law and New York consumer law. The jury found Papaya liable and awarded Skillz $420 million in actual damages. The jury also gave the judge advisory calculations for the money Papaya had saved and the profits tied to the deception. The judge ultimately chose the larger remedy, $719 million in disgorged profit. That calculation compared what the company spent to acquire and retain paying users. It estimated the additional revenue Papaya received, then deducted its costs. The final award replaced the jury's damages figure. Papaya was not ordered to pay both. That award belongs to Skillz. The customers who entered Papaya's games had a separate class action in California. Papaya created a $15 million settlement fund for eligible U.S. customers. They could choose cash or withdrawable in-game money, while some active users would receive an automatic in-game distribution. Legal fees, administration, and other expenses would come out of the fund before the customers were paid. The cases here dealt with different kinds of harm. Skillz argued that Papaya's false advertising took business from it. The customers said they deposited and wagered money without knowing Papaya could populate their tournaments with bots. That is how the outcomes became so lopsided. Papaya's commercial rival won an enormous judgment for damage to its business. The people who actually entered the bot-filled tournaments will divide what remains of a much smaller settlement fund. There is now also another question. Can Skillz actually collect? Papaya says the judgment contains serious legal and factual errors, and it intends to appeal. Days after the judgment, Papaya began Chapter 15 proceedings in Delaware, alongside a court-supervised process in Israel. That process could protect American assets while the Israeli case continues. Papaya's filing says it cannot pay the Skillz judgment, if enforceable, alongside its other debts. It also says the business remains profitable and is operating normally. A Delaware judge has temporarily blocked collection against Papaya's American assets while the court considers whether to recognize the Israeli proceeding. Skillz has won the case. Getting the money could become a second fight. and a much longer one. Solitaire Cash is still available to download, and Papaya says the bots are gone. After the verdict, Skillz asked for something current players would actually see. It wanted the court to make Papaya display a warning when a user opened one of its games. The proposed screen would say that Papaya had deployed bots, denied using them, and been found liable for false advertising. The judge refused. An injunction is meant to prevent likely future harm. Skillz had proven what Papaya did in the past, but they had not shown how many current users had seen the old advertising or were still being misled by it. The evidence also indicated that bot use had ended. The court separately declined to forbid Papaya from ever using bots again because the legal violation in this case was false advertising, rather than bot use in itself. The jury had already found that Papaya deliberately deceived people about its bots. That finding remained intact, and yet Skillz had not yet met the separate legal test for forcing a disclosure inside the app. That may be a coherent distinction in an injunction order. To a player, the outcome is strange. Somebody can download Solitaire Cash today, deposit money, and never see any notice explaining why the company behind it has a $719 million judgment hanging over it. The appeal could take years, and the amount may change. Papaya's own game data will remain. Tournaments presented as human competition, when the other people on the leaderboard sometimes were not people at all. The technology behind the bots was almost comically simple. Each one was a static score, selected by an algorithm, then dressed up with a name and a profile. There was no virtual solitaire player solving a board in the background. The hard part was everything surrounding that score. The advertising, legal opinion, customer denials, deleted complaints, and, eventually, the business that grew around a crowd Papaya did not yet have. The bots never had to play solitaire. They only had to make an empty room look full.